Today is Monday, October 4. My name is Pastor Anthony, and this is Wilderness Wanderings. Today our text comes from Matthew 23. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides, you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Matthew 23, verses 23 and 24. Last week, Canada marked the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's easy to pay attention when everyone else is and when the orange shirts are out in force. But now, a few days later, and at the beginning of a new week, it's a good time to ask the question, what stuck with you from that day? Our church sits on land that was originally a shared territory between the Haudenosaunee and Anishnaabeg nations, protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. That is our territorial land acknowledgement, but of course, unless you know what those terms mean, it can be difficult to understand. So let me share a little bit. Who are the Haudenosaunee? Well, it's a confederacy of nations that we might know better by some of their other names. It's a confederacy made up of the Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga, and Mohawk, mostly familiar names. Later, the Tuscarora would also join in these 5 nations, making them the 6 nations that we know today from the Grand River. Colonists in North America knew these people as the Iroquois, but their self-designation is Haudenosaunee, meaning people of the Longhouse. How about the Anishnaabeg? Who are they? Well, this confederacy of tribes includes the Algonquin, Nipissing, Mississauga, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. The first 3 in this list you may recognize from local names in this region of Ontario. And the last 3 I may actually know better, as they were the Council of 3 Fires nations, to whom belonged the land that I grew up on in my home state of Michigan. That's the Haudenosaunee and the Anishnaabeg. Now, what was the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant? Well, it's an agreement that binds all these nations together as sharers in the provisions of the land, but also in its protection. It was an agreement of mutual respect to one another's needs, but also to the needs of the land for stewardship. As settlers moved into these areas of the Great Lakes, they were invited to join in this land use covenant, together with the nations who had already resided here for millennia. This was hospitality and generosity, founded in a belief that there was enough land and enough provision if the land was shared and respected together. That sounds a lot like our own creational injunctions from the beginning of Genesis, doesn't it? The settlers had a different understanding of land use, though, not as a gift to be shared with open hands, but as a resource to be privately owned and exploited to its fullest wealth-generating potential, even if that meant using the resource up. The European settlers came with their new laws and government, and with a decided arrogance against these naive ways of mutuality and sharing. Over time, the land would simply be taken from the original nations to whom it belonged, through the exploitative use of these new settler laws. The covenant of the Dish with One Spoon was then violated, and the mighty 6 nations were confined to piddly reserves and subjected to cultural genocide through the residential schools. All the while, many of these new European settlers attended their churches and gave their tithes. Which brings us back to Matthew. We Westerners believe, or at least act, as if our thick codes of civilized law, which includes the subjugative Indian Act, are superior to any of the naive forms of government possessed by the nations we conquered by our laws through treaty. But as you listen to this story again, weigh it out for yourself. Who in this story is more like the Pharisees Jesus proclaimed a woe upon. Who are the ones who have neglected the more important matters of the law, such as justice, mercy, and faithfulness? As you journey on, go with the blessing of God. May the peace of the Lord Christ go with you, wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.